Hello there, I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do to get a controllable sliding banner up and running on your own website. I'll show you all of the code, I'll briefly explain it, there are various demos throughout the tutorial, let's get started. We need to start with the HTML code that you can see on screen right now, but the first thing you need to do is create a new HTML file and a new CSS file. I've named mine Responsive Controllable Banner. And as you can see in the VS Code Explorer panel on the left, I've set the name of the parent folder which contains all of my files to sliding banner. Just to give you a quick demo, the left control slider controls how fast the banner slides, the one on the right controls how long it waits between sliding, we've got a play pause button, and we can manually control which image is displayed by using the 3 round buttons or the left and right arrows. We'll get to the jQuery file in just a moment, but to get started we first need some image files, and so to make things easier for you, rather than creating your own image files right now, I recommend copying the ones I'm using so that everything looks exactly the same as what you see me doing. If you go to my website programmingcreatively.com, you can then right click on each of the 3 banner images and select Save Image As, put them in your parent folder, and then do the same for the company logo. Once you've done that, you should then be able to see the files inside your parent folder within whatever code editor you're using. To run the HTML file, you can either double click it within Windows Explorer, or if you're using VS Code like I am, you can open it with Live Server. Now at the moment the 3 banner images are simply displayed one beneath the other, but before we start adding some CSS to make it look more like what we're aiming for, let's first add the HTML for the controls container division. After saving and refreshing the browser, we can now see the controls at the bottom left. The next thing to do is add some CSS, so we'll start by setting the company logo's background colour and max width property. Now let's center the text for each slide and also style the controls container, the play pause button, and make the 3 round buttons become visible. It's the next part where it starts to get interesting. When we add in the CSS for the slide division and its parent container, the images disappear. The reason that happens is on screen now, and I'll also show you what happens when we comment overflow hidden and position absolute. Now this is where the JavaScript comes into play, but we first need to download jQuery, which you can do by searching for jQuery, then go to the download page, click on the first link, try not to panic, right click, and then select Save As, saving it into your parent folder, and that's all you need to do. Now back to our sliding banner code. This is the script we're starting off with to make the images reappear. We're setting the width of the images equal to the width of the container, and the container height equal to the height of the image division, and by doing that, the position absolute property value that we just looked at is now taken care of. The Z-index controls which of the 3 images we can see, which is necessary for when they're sitting on top of one another, and so the visible image division is the one with the highest Z-index value. Let's now add some styling for the controls division. There's a slight size and position change, but the most visible difference is that we now have a colour gradient added to the right slider ready to be animated. Now this is where it starts to get really interesting. In the next 2.5 minutes we'll actually have our sliding banner animating as shown in the introduction, although we will need to get the controls working afterwards. This first script creates 2 new style elements and appends them to the document head, and then creates 2 new style sheets that we can programmatically add and delete rules to and from. Both of these 2 one-line functions are used to insert a keyframe rule, which is then called upon later in the program. Next we need to add some additional JavaScript to the window onload event handler. We now call the first one-line function to add a keyframe transformation, which animates the slide images by an amount equal to the width of the images. We then call the second one-line function to add a keyframe, which animates the colour gradient of the right control slider. We also set the scroll speed and the pause duration as desired by accessing the control slider position values, make the first round button light up, and then finally call the play pause banner function. For now, all the play pause banner function does is adds a CSS animation to the duration indicator slider by calling upon the keyframe rule that we just added a moment ago within the window onload event handler, and then it sets the time interval for running the slide animation. all the banner direction function does is let the process sliding banner function know which way to slide. And so we're almost there now. The process sliding banner function is a big one, but it's honestly not as scary as it looks. The first two if statements make sure that the slide index value loops back to either the start or the end of the 3 slides, depending on which direction the banner is sliding. If the banner is sliding left, we then set the current and next index values as required, call the set slides z-index function, which we'll look at in a moment, move the newly selected banner image to the right ready for sliding left, insert a CSS animation in the same way we did for the duration indicator, and then finally call the slides back to center function. Sliding right is exactly the same as sliding left, but with the values reversed as required. The slide z-index function sets the z-index values accordingly, so you might recall that I demonstrated the z-index a few moments ago. And then the slides back to center function waits until the current slide animation has ended, deletes the CSS animation rule, and then moves the slides back to center. And that's it. Let's save the changes, press F5 just to make sure the browser is refreshed, and then if we've done everything right, we should see the banner sliding from right to left. Now there's a really cool test we can do to help see what's happening with the keyframes animations, and that is to simply comment the overflow hidden line within the CSS. What you can see happening now is the image first being moved over to the right ready for sliding left, and then that image and the one currently visible at the centre are both animated to the left, and then after the animation is complete, both are moved back to centre. So the only thing left to do now is getting the controls working. Let's start by completing the play pause button functionality, which requires that we add the remove class line to the end of the if statement, and that we also add the else statement, which stops the banner by clearing the interval and stops the colour gradient animation of the right slider by deleting its style sheet rule. Before we test it though, let's first add the play button's background colour and its play pause hover colours, and also at this stage we might as well add the 3 dot buttons hover and active colours. Now hopefully when we click on the play pause button we'll see the banner stop sliding, so that's looking good so far, but we now need to add the JavaScript functionality for the dot buttons and the left and right arrows, and also the CSS for the left and right arrows. So within the process sliding banner function we need to insert a for loop, a single line and an if statement. The for loop removes the active dot button styling by cycling through all 3 dot buttons. The single line then adds that active dot button styling to the dot button that we've clicked on. And the if statement sets the z-index as required and also adds the image fade styling, which is then removed after the selected image has finished fading in. The last piece of JavaScript we need to add before we check it working is to call the banner direction function, passing in either the left or right arrows button value from being clicked on. And similarly, we need to call the process sliding banner function with the dot buttons value when that's clicked on. Now let's add in the CSS for the arrows as I just mentioned, and also notice how the z-index for the arrow buttons is set to 3. And so if we save all the changes we've just made, then refresh the browser by pressing Ctrl plus F5, we can now test it working. So that's all looking really great, but notice when we click on any of the 3 dot buttons, the images are not fading in like they're supposed to in accordance with the JavaScript that we just added. And that's because we haven't yet added the CSS, so let's do that now and then test it again. And now we can see them fading in as expected. There's just the control sliders to get working now, and then we've done it. The left slider simply sets the scroll speed based on the slider position. The right slider sets the pause duration based on its slider position, so let's just quickly remind ourselves of where the slider values are set within the HTML. But the right slider then also stops the banner by clearing the interval, then deletes the animation style rule for the colour gradient, waits for a fraction of a second to allow the deletion to complete, reinserts the rule with the new pause duration value, and also restarts the banner with the new pause duration value. And so that's it, we're now ready to test. We can have a play around with the slider controls. Let's increase the scroll speed first by changing the left slider position, and now let's reduce the pause duration by changing the right slider position. We can also slow down the scroll speed or have it running fast but with a much longer pause duration. The very last thing we need to do to complete this tutorial is to add the window on resize event. The reason we need to do this is because if the window is resized on a desktop, for example, or if a phone or tablet is rotated between portrait and landscape, then we need to update a few things exactly like what we've already done. We need to set the image width and container height exactly like we did in the initiate slides function, except I forgot to add px after container height, although it still works, so I guess jQuery adds that in for us. Both transform rules need deleting, and then finally we need to get the new banner width and then reinsert the two transform rules so that they use the new banner width. And so that really is everything completed now. So if we resize the browser window, we should see the banner size being corrected, which it is. That means that we've now programmatically made the banner responsive to all viewport and window sizes. That's all for this tutorial, and so if you like what we've been doing, then remember to hit the subscribe button and I'll see you next time.